woke up last night somewhere around 2 a.m. to the sound of something creaking downstairs. At first, I wasn't sure if I had really heard anything at all, or if I was just dreaming. Still in that blurry space between sleep and waking, I lay there in the dark, my eyes open, listening intently for a minute or two. There was only silence, the kind of silence that fills your ears until it hums. I told myself it was probably nothing, just the house settling, the wind rattling the windows, maybe a tree branch brushing against the siding. That's all it was, I assured myself. I'm not usually the paranoid type. I've always been able to shrug off those middle-of-the-night sounds without a second thought, but last night was different. Something about the air in the room felt off. There it was again, a soft creak, followed by what sounded like a shuffling noise. This time, my heart skipped. I sat up in bed, straining to hear, my muscles tensing under the blanket. The sound had definitely come from downstairs. It was faint but unmistakable. Someone was moving around down there. I live alone, have for the past few years, ever since my last roommate moved out and I decided not to replace him. It's been nice having the place to myself, mostly quiet, peaceful. Until now, I told myself it was nothing serious. Just my imagination running wild because it was late. But that little voice in the back of my head wouldn't shut up. I kept thinking about all the true crime shows I binge watch before bed, the podcasts that go into too much detail about how intruders get into homes. All those what-if scenarios. It's hard to shake those thoughts when you're alone at night and the house is too quiet. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and checked the time, 2:17 a.m. My thumb hovered over the screen as I debated calling someone, just to have a voice on the other end of the line. I decided against it. I didn't want to sound paranoid. What would I even say? Instead, I climbed out of bed as quietly as I could, my bare feet making no sound on the hardwood floor. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't want to announce that I was awake. I stood there for a moment just outside my bedroom, listening. Nothing. Maybe I really was imagining it, but just as I started to turn back toward the bed, I heard another noise, closer this time, like the faint scuffle of footsteps on the stairs. I froze. I didn't have any weapons in the house. Hell, I didn't even have a baseball bat or something heavy to swing if I needed to. I'm not the kind of person who thinks about that stuff in advance, but now I was wishing I had something to defend myself with. I took a deep breath and made my way toward the stairs. Slowly and silently, every nerve in my body on edge. The hallway was dark, the shadows deep and unsettling. I could barely make out the bottom of the staircase. I squinted, trying to focus, but there was no movement, no sounds. Then another noise, this time from the kitchen. A soft metallic click. My blood ran cold. I knew without a doubt that something was down there. I tried to stay calm, keep my breathing steady, but it was difficult. My mind raced, trying to figure out what I could do. Maybe I'd left a door unlocked. Maybe it was just an animal that had somehow gotten in. But that didn't explain the footsteps. That didn't explain the very real feeling of dread that was crawling up my spine. I slowly crept down the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The wood creaked once under my weight, and I held my breath. I reached the bottom and peeked around the corner into the kitchen. It was dark, too dark to see anything clearly, but I could just make out the faint outline of the counter, the fridge humming softly in the background. Nothing seemed out of place at first, but that didn't ease the knowing sense that I wasn't alone. I stood there for a moment, holding my breath, listening. My ears strained for any hint of movement, and then, just as I was about to convince myself it had all been in my head, I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of someone breathing. My throat went dry. The breath wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned toward the doorway. The living room was just beyond the hallway, but it was pitch black, and I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I cursed myself for not installing more lights. The breathing continued, slow, steady, deliberate. It wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of the house, It might as well have been a scream. I tried to think of a plan, something logical, but my mind was scattered, frantic. I didn't know if I should confront whoever was in my living room or if I should run back upstairs, lock myself in the bedroom, and call the police. Then I remembered my phone. I pulled it from my pocket, but when I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. No service. That made no sense. I'd never had issues with service in my house before. I stared at the screen in disbelief, hoping the signal bars would return. But nothing. Just that taunting no service message. My mind raced. How was it possible? And then the thought hit me like a punch to the gut. What if someone had jammed it? What if they knew I'd try to call for help? I shook my head, trying to dispel the irrational fear, but the breathing, it was still there. Louder now, closer. I had to move. I couldn't just stand there. Slowly, I backed away from the kitchen and toward the stairs. My legs felt like lead, my body moving sluggishly as panic gripped me. The air seemed thick, oppressive. Every step I took felt like it would alert whoever was in the house. I just needed to get back to my room, lock the door, and I tripped over something. A loud crash echoed through the house as I fell backward, hitting the floor hard. Pain shot through my back and shoulders, but that was the least of my concerns. I'd knocked over something. What, I wasn't sure, but the sound had been deafening in the quiet house. For a moment, I lay there stunned, trying to catch my breath, but then I heard it. Footsteps coming toward me. Slow, deliberate steps moving down the hallway, closer and closer. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering in my chest, and darted toward the stairs. My vision swam with panic, but I managed to make it up 2 steps at a time, my legs burning with the effort. I threw myself into the bedroom and slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling fingers. Silence. I pressed my ear against the door, listening. The footsteps had stopped. Maybe they left. Maybe they'd heard the noise and ran off. But no, I wasn't that lucky. I knew it. I backed away from the door, moving toward the window. If I could just climb out, maybe I could make it to my car or run to the neighbor's house. But as I reached for the window latch, I froze. There, just outside the window, was a handprint. A smeared, greasy handprint on the glass. My breath caught in my throat. Someone had been out there, watching. I turned back toward the door, my mind racing. This wasn't some random break-in. Someone had been stalking me, watching me, maybe for days, maybe longer, and now they were inside my house. The door creaked. I stared at it, my body paralyzed with fear. The handle slowly turned, the lock rattling as someone tried to open it. They were right outside my room. I backed away, my eyes wide, but there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. The door rattled again, more insistently this time than a soft knock. I swallowed, my heart slamming against my ribs. Another knock. I backed into the far corner of the room, shaking, trying to make myself as small as possible. The knocks came again, louder this time, almost frantic. The door shook on its hinges. Whoever was on the other side wasn't going to stop. I glanced around the room, desperate for something to defend myself with. My eyes landed on a heavy lamp on the nightstand. I grabbed it, holding it tightly, my palms slick with sweat. The knock stopped for a moment. There was only silence. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Then, with a deafening crash, the door splintered. They were coming in. I raised the lamp, ready to fight for my life. The door swung open, and a figure stepped inside, their face obscured by shadows. I screamed, swinging the lamp wildly, but the figure didn't flinch.